Hello everyone and welcome back. My name is Alex and today I am going to present to you a video describing hybrid ammunition. Now this video is a re-upload or redo of a video that I'd done previously, but there were some audio problems with that video and now I want to make a video that is clear of those problems. So anyways, hybrid ammunition. So hybrid ammunition is interesting in that two races actually use this ammunition for their primary weapon systems are the Kinetic and the Caldari. So because of that, the way that ammunition is used is going to be very important in how effective a particular ship is in its role and how it uses that ammunition, and particularly for its weapon systems. So for the Kinetic, they are well known for their close-range, blaster-oriented ships that have a high amount of damage per second and burst damage. Caldari ships, on the other hand, are more weighted towards railguns, and they can engage on a target at a very long range for very good damage that normally people wouldn't see at that range. And many times they'd even be shocked if they could be hit at all. One great example of this concept is this ship here. This is the Eagle. An Eagle can snipe out to, I've heard, up to 200 kilometers with the right ammunition. But the other thing about Caldari ships, though, that's interesting, is that because many of these ships have a range bonus, such as the Eagle here, if I do the show info, you'll see that the ship gets a 10% bonus to turret optimal range twice. One for the Caldari cruiser and one for the heavy assault cruiser. It gets a 100% increase in its range. So what that means is that at a given range, the Eagle or many other Caldari ships can use a higher level or higher damage type ammunition than other ships could use if they were using railguns or something similar. Okay. So that's being said, let's get in. So one thing about this video, just to avoid a little bit of confusion, I am going to be focusing on the ammunition themselves, not necessarily the weapons platform. Okay, that will be a separate video. Okay, with regards to railguns and the blasters and all the intricacies that come into that. This is more for the ammunition. So anyways, jumping in here, let's jump right in. So hybrid ammunition is right here. I'm going to focus on medium level charges. So these are going to be for cruisers and battle cruisers, things of that size. So the medium size weapons. Now the thing about the hybrid ammunition is that it runs along a scale. And along this scale, on one end you have damage. At one end, you have ammunition that is long range and low damage, while the other extreme, you have very short range and very high damage. Okay, but another aspect that comes into this is the capacitor usage, and we're going to dive into that as well. Okay, so starting off with on the long end range of the scale here, we're going to look at iron. So iron charges 60% bonus in optimal range. So this is very key for ships that are going to do a lot of sniping work or need to really reach out far. So again, more for railguns. It does 6 kinetic and 4 thermal damage, which is not a bad split between the two. You do get a 30% capacitor need bonus, which is good. The more capacitor that you can keep, the better off you are. Now, one thing to keep in mind, though, is that this really becomes an impact given the number of turrets your ship has. So if your ship has 3 or 4 railgun turrets, you'll feel the difference, but it's not going to be huge. However, if you're in a ship like the Ferox or the Rock, where they have 7 or 8 turrets, you will definitely feel the capacitor being chewed up if there's not a good capacitor need bonus, like you have with iron charge here. So not the most damaging ammunition out there, but not an ammunition you can kind of go wrong with. But just keep in mind, if you have a lot of guns focused on one target, this can easily shred a target that's going to be a size lower than what your ship is. So if you're a cruiser and you're able to make contact with a frigate that doesn't have a whole lot of transversal, then this can really do the job. Okay, so that is iron. Next up, we have. Let's take a look here. So 40% range one. Yes. So next up we have tungsten. Yeah, usually you go in 20% increments. That's why I was looking for 40%. So tungsten charge, basically, it's the same as iron, although you do get a bit more kinetic damage increase. Not necessarily thermal. Thermal is going to stay the same. Yeah. But kinetic damage is going to go up. So this is good against any targets that are weak to kinetic damage, or you're fighting more armor type of targets. Okay. You do get almost the exact same bonus in capacitor usage that you get with iron. It's just 30%, now it's 27%. I don't know. It's almost an accounting error. I guess they had to show something that wasn't quite as good as iron, or else no one would use iron. But the key thing is that 40% range increase. That's still quite good for a railgun system, particularly one that will have the Caldari range bonus from the ship also applied. So this can be a good alternative to iron ammunition. Okay, next one is kind of one of my favorites. It's iridium. So iridium now brings up the thermal damage. So now you have 6 thermal, 8 kinetic. That's quite good because thermal damage on the whole is one of the best damage types that you can inflict. There is also a capacitor bonus of minus 24%. So again, it falls in the same family as iron and tungsten. But now it's only a 20% range increase. Now that's still quite good. But now you're not going to reach out nearly as far as you could with iron or even tungsten. Yeah. So now you're starting to see the scale shift towards damage. The thing about iridium, though, and this is just from my general practice, this is a good, what I call travel type of ammunition. If I'm traveling and I'm not exactly sure what I'm going to expect, then I like to keep iridium ammunition loaded into the gun. The reason is that I get a good amount of damage, I get pretty good capacitor savings, and I also get a pretty decent damage increase, also with the range bonus. So I do like iridium for that. So those 3 ammunitions, iron, tungsten, iridium, those are the 3 hybrid ammunitions that are going to have an optimal range increase. So very good for railguns. Not as good for blasters. Blasters do not operate with optimal range. Their optimal range is terrible. But rather, they work within fall-off range. So that's one thing to keep in mind. If you're a Galente pilot or you're a Caldari pilot running with blasters, this is not as effective with blasters that you would have with railguns. Okay? Next up, we have lead. 6 thermal, 10 kinetic. So now you're starting to see the pendulum swing towards kinetic damage. Again, very good. No range bonus, but look at this. A 50% capacitor need bonus. That's huge. What I like about this ammunition is that this is good for ships that have a lot of modules running concurrently. So ECM ships, for example, and they still want to do some damage. A lot of times they'll be running a missile build, but if they do take guns for that instant damage capability, this is the type of ammunition they will load in. Or a ship that's going to be running prop mods, active repair mods, things like that, where capacitor is going to be a key thing. You do not want that capacitor being chewed up by your guns, particularly when you have 7 or 8 of them. Yeah. So if you have an active tank ship, lead charges are a good thing to have in your cargo hold. Yeah, when you get to that point, you're taking a lot of damage, you're taking a lot of aggro, and you need to really keep your modules going. This is good ammunition to have. So that puts it right in the middle. Yeah, there's no range bonus, there's no range penalty. Damage is pretty good, more weighted towards kinetic, but an incredible 50% capacitor need bonus. I consider that kind of unique. So lead is also a good one to have in your cargo hold, especially if you have an active module type of ship. Not a burst one. Okay, if you have a burst shield system where you're going to be using capacitor charges to keep your shields going, you probably don't need it that much because you're not going to be running an active tank. You're going to be running a burst tank. But if you're something that is going to be running a sustained tank, then that's a good option. Okay, so now, that being said, we're going to go to the other side of the scale here, where we're going to start to have capacitor, the capacitor need bonuses are going to go down even further, but also the optimal range is going to go down. So those type of ammunitions are, we'll run through them here, they're going to be antimatter, they're going to be plutonium, they're going to be thorium, and there could be uranium. So there's 4 of those. Yeah. Now going in here, we're going to just look at the chart. And now you want to go, okay, which one's going to have the least amount of range penalty and also give me a good capacitor reduction. Okay. So the first one that comes on that list is thorium. So thorium is also good ammunition, but now this is going to be good ammunition more towards blasters rather than railguns. So damage-wise, now you get 10 kinetic and 8 thermal. So a pretty good damage spread, almost equal spread between kinetic and thermal. 40% capacitor bonus, that's really, really good. And only a 12.5% optimal range penalty. I would almost say this is almost just as good as lead. The only difference being that 10% capacitor need bonus and that range penalty. I would say if you were going to be running a blaster build, I would go with thorium rather than lead. Now that little extra damage and that range bonus is not going to hurt you hardly at all. If you're running a blaster boat and you have to choose between lead or thorium, I would generally go with thorium, unless you really need that extra 10% capacitor save. So thorium, again, a good overall, what I call travel ammunition, but more for blasters. Okay, now I always kind of get these two confused. It's very easy to get these two confused because they're very similar. And they are uranium and plutonium. Let's take a look here. They are very next to each other on the scale. And you'd be forgiven if you get these two mixed up and you wouldn't know what the difference is. Because I have definitely done that quite a number of times. So let's start off with uranium. So uranium, you're going to take a 25% optimal range bonus penalty. And your capacitor need bonus goes to minus 8%. Now that is a big shift from thorium to uranium. Yeah. And how much do you get for that? Well, you get some extra kinetic. You get 12 kinetic damage and 8 thermal. Still a good ammunition. But that range bonus, if you're running a hybrid build, that is going to sting. Unless, again, this is going to go back to what I touched on earlier before. If your ship, Caldari's ship, has that range bonus and you got trained up pretty high, then what you can do then is you can use uranium in place of thorium and get a lot more damage at the same distance that ship that was unbonused wouldn't be able to do. But again, the caveat is the big change is the capacitor need bonus. If you really need a capacitor, you definitely want to stick with thorium or even lead. But if capacitor is not that big of an issue, if you're not running that many railguns like with the Eagle here that I have in the background, then definitely look at uranium. That is a very good ammunition. Its brother ammunition is plutonium. So plutonium, all it does, it weights more towards thermal. So now you almost get an even split again. Minus 5% capacity bonus. It's almost no capacity bonus at all, basically, but at least it's something. And a minus 37.5% range penalty. What's the difference between these two? Well, with plutonium, you get more equalized damage than with uranium. And with uranium, you do get a little bit more capacitor bonus, need bonus. If you're fighting something that is weak to kinetic, like say Gurustal's rats, definitely go with uranium. Yeah, because that thermal, yeah, it helps, but that's not the weak point of those rats. Yeah, kinetic is the weak point of those rats, and that is really where you want to use uranium rather than plutonium. Yeah, yeah, you get some bonuses, but again, those bonuses add up. Last but not least, the coup de grace, Antimatter. Antimatter is an ammunition that is in everyone's ship. It does an enormous amount of damage. It's got 10 thermal and 14 kinetic. It gives a brutal minus 50% range bonus. It cuts your range in half. Now, if you're running a Caldari ship, though, with the range bonus, and you get it all the way up to level 5, then you almost recover all of that range penalty. And if you do something with the Eagle, like I have here, and all your skills at level 5, including heavy assault ships, let me show you what you can do. I have an optimal range of 41 kilometers with antimatter, with a damage bonus. That is extremely powerful at that range. Yeah. I haven't changed this fit in forever, so the rest of the fit is not very good. That's the reason why. But 41 kilometers with antimatter, where usually it's down to like 16, is incredible. And that really brings out the strengths of the Eagle. If you're the Eagle at medium range, everyone else is using, like lead or iridium type of ammo or their equivalents in projectile or frequency crystal ammunition. Here I am, I'm just pumping out antimatter, the very highest ammunition at the same range. That is the key part of Caldari tactics. So again, back to antimatter. For a hybrid system, that minus 50% range penalty and particularly for a blaster, it hurts. But again, since you're mostly fighting fall off anyways, that's not that big a deal. Plus you have 14 kinetic damage. So this ammunition you load in when you need to pump out the most damage as quickly as possible. Capacitor is not even an issue. Or you're fighting a structure. If you're fighting a ship or a structure that is one level higher than you or more, well then you're not even going to miss with things like with transversal and stuff. So you need to get right up to that structure, put your nose right into their face, and blast it off. That is where antimatter ammunition comes in. And that's why people really like it. It's great for PvP, it's great for PvE, but it will really put a strain on your capacitor. So you need very good ship management skills, you need good positioning, and again, it's a very much a close range ammunition. It's the close range ammunition. One other thing to note is that none of these ammunition has a penalty to tracking. All of them, you get 100% tracking, and that's important as we go further into the advanced charges. Okay, so those are your standard charges for hybrid ammunition. Now, if you look up here, you'll see blaster and railgun charges. These are for your Tech 2 guns, and they are exclusive to that weapon system. One quick note, you also see faction charges here. They are essentially the same as the standard charges, but they have a higher damage output. Okay, but their base characteristics are the same as the standard charges. They do more damage. Again, PvPers typically get faction charges. Okay, standard charges are good for just about anything, but more for PvE, because these are significantly more expensive, the faction charges. Okay, jumping in, let's go to the advanced railgun charges. So for all your railgun users, there are 2 ammunitions that you will use for your railgun. So they are Javelin and Spike. So starting off here, I'm actually going to start with Spike. This is your long-range sniping ammunition, because look at this, 80% range bonus. This is the ammunition that gives hybrid players these insane distance snipes. We're talking 200 kilometers or more on ships that have a hard time even tracking things out that far. It also does an equalized amount of damage across thermal and kinetic, 8 and 8. So you can tell that's more weighted towards PvP because they do an equal amount of damage against shield or armor-based ships. But you do take a pretty big penalty, and that is a 25% tracking speed multiplier, which means there's a 75% reduction in your turret tracking speed. So the target that's way out there better not be moving relative to your ship in an angle sense. Yeah, the turrets are essentially going to be locked in place. And if they hit, they hit. If they miss, they miss. So this is, again, a very specific type of ammunition for a very specific use case. And that is long-range sniping, preset sniping points, warping in, target, hitting, and then warping out. Or if you have someone that can lock and hold down a target and you need to stay a long ways away to avoid return fire, this is the ammunition that you can use. On the flip side, however, we have Javelin. Javelin is antimatter on steroids. So let's go through it. A minus 75% range bonus. Okay, so basically you're going to have to park your ship right up against whatever you're shooting at that, almost for either weapon systems, railguns or blasters. Also, if you take a look here, very interesting, you get a 25% tracking speed multiplier. So this actually helps you in track speed. It actually tracks faster. Yeah. So very good for close-in engagement with the target, and you're trying to maintain that angular velocity around the target. Basically, you're orbiting your target. Yeah. This helps with that because it knows you're going to be right up against it. You need a bonus to your tracking speed, and there it is. But look at that damage. 16 thermal, 12 kinetic. Incredible. This will frankly melt everything that it touches. Extremely good against other players, other ships, and very good against structures. Although a tad more expensive. If you're doing some structure bashing, you'll actually probably want to deal with Antimatter rather than Javelin because this is quite expensive. But you should always keep Javelin ammunition if you are, like, say, a cruiser and you got an enemy battleship that's locked down and you can really just pile on the damage. Putting this in, I have actually gotten near the top of the kill board with a railgun ships, even doing more damage than like blaster ships and things like that by loading this ammunition. It's that good. You don't need a lot of it, but you need some of it. Also, one interesting note about this ammunition, it is one of the very few, I think maybe the only one, where the thermal component is higher than the kinetic component. I think this is the only hybrid ammunition that does that. Last but not least, blaster charges. We have null and void. And they kind of operate similarly to Javelin and Spike for railguns. They kind of do the same thing for blasters. So null ammunition, if you take a look here, there is a fall-off modifier. So if you remember what I said about blasters, they operate within fall-off range. So this actually really increases the range of a blaster systems. Also chucks in a 40% range bonus to optimal range. Very nice to have. And what that does is, and this goes kind of beyond the scope of the video, if you can push out your optimal range for a blaster, then the fall-off range also extends further than that. Yeah, so the optimal range bonus and the fall-off bonus adds together. They are cumulative. And that is why some hybrid systems can actually stretch out fairly far, farther than you would think, And one of the reasons is this type of ammunition, null. You do take a hit on tracking speed, 75% tracking speed decline. For a blaster system, that hurts, but again, blasters have much higher tracking speed than railguns. And again, I wasn't quite certain, but yeah, here it is. This is the other ammunition where the thermal component is higher than the kinetic component. Yeah. So this is your long-range blaster type of ammunition. It is null. Again, good to have some in your cargo hold. Void. Holy cow. So Void, you get a tracking speed penalty of 25%. You get a capacitor penalty of another 25% on top of what you need. So it's really going to eat up capacitor. You get a minus 25% in your range penalty. So that is going to be hurt. And then you have a 50% decrease in your fall off. So again, even for a blaster ship, now you have to be right up against your target, literally parked in front of your target. But look at that damage. 17.7 split equally between thermal and kinetic. This is the highest damage hybrid ammunition in the game. As I said, this is antimatter on steroids. For blasters, in this case. So, ending off with a couple of general points for your gunfighter type of ship. Any one of you that pilot ships that are turret-based ships, having the correct sets of ammunition will dictate what you can do with your ship. How far you can fight out, or how close to an enemy you get, how much damage you can output, how much capacity you're going to use for your weapon systems. So, there is no one catch-all ammunition. All right, you should have several sets of ammunition. In general, you should have a what I call travel type of ammunition. Again, I recommend Iridium, Thorium, things of that nature. It's kind of in the middle of that range. Lead is good too. You should have a high damage ammunition. So that would typically fall into antimatter. Or if you're a blaster or railgun, if you're using Tech 2 guns, you can carry Void and Javelin respectively. And then you probably want something that gives you some decent range. It does not have to be the maximum range. Okay? Again, something like Iridium along those lines, or even these Tech 2 ones like Null that give an increased range, that could be good for blasters. Spike, not so much. That's a little too restrictive, but Null can be a good one for blasters. So, anyways, you should be carrying maybe 2 or 3 different sets. I'd say 3 different sets of ammunition of varying things in your ship. Fourth one, if you're a ship that runs a lot of active modules, definitely consider bringing either lead or thorium. You need something with a very good capacitor need bonus that will allow you to continue to do damage and also run your active modules. So anyways, I am going to leave it here, folks. I hope you enjoyed this video. Please let me know. Again, this is a redo. This is a re-upload of the hybrid video I've done before. And this is one that I hope it cleans up a little more clear, and that will help you guys out. So anyways, feel free to let me know in the comments what you think, and we'll go from there. All right, thank you very much, guys, and take care.